Good morning, everyone. My name's Matt. I'm the MD of BIMA. This, I think, is our last event of the year. So it's lovely to see you all, and thanks for signing on. I hope you're looking forward to Christmas. I was asked if I was ready for Christmas, and my answer was I'm ready for it, but I'm not prepared for it. So I think we're all just crawling towards the end of the line at the moment, aren't we? So this is a BIMA masterclass, and we run these every month. My job is just to say hello, say thank you for coming, and introduce today's speaker. So a BIMA masterclass is an event that's quite simply a masterclass that's run by the membership for the membership. So we've got this wonderful eclectic mix of companies and people in the BIMA community and in membership, and we just kind of pick their brains, and they'll offer to run a masterclass and kind of express that knowledge, expertise, experience that they've got to everybody else in membership. So today's subject is design thinking, principles and practices of. And thank you, Nathan Forward, who's the strategy director at CreateFuture, who's going to run it all for us. So it's a webinar format. You're not on camera, you're not on shows. Hopefully you're sat back with a cup of tea and you can enjoy this one. Nathan's going to go through a few housekeeping notes, but you can engage with him through the chat. One key job I do have to do, though, is I have to tell you all about some stuff that's coming up. Like I said, this is the last event of the year, but we've got a kind of a big start to the year in January when we go back. But there's three things I wanted to mention because we're having a big push at the moment. So we've got two training initiatives. We're launching a lot more L&D products next year. That's one of the key strategies for BIMA. But the two I wanted to mention are, one, we've got a product called The Good Return. We're working in partnership with somebody called Amy Keane. The Good Return is like a series of boot camp training camp, a boot camp under L&D that's specifically for women that are returning to work after maternity leave, and just to help get them back into the workplace. But they'll go through it together of people, women that are working in digital. So there's like a community feel to it as well. We've still got, I think, 3 or 4 places left on that cohort. That starts in January. We've got a members lunch, which is a really good social. The members lunch is in London. That's in January, but we've got other things going on as well. So Nathan's up in Scotland. We were just talking about our Burns Night Bash. That's at the end of January. So I'll be up there for that. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is it's another L&D product, but we've managed to get hold of a lot of government funding. So there's a thing called the Leadership Academy, and there are different levels of it. For example, I think level 7 will take you on towards something that is the equivalent of a master's, right down through to level 3 for people that are at the beginning of their career. But the best bit about it is that we can get it 95 to 100% fully funded for you. But there's a whole lot of information around that. I think either myself or Lara, who organises these events, will send you all an email with 3 links to the Good Return, to the members lunch, and to the Leadership Academy. That's my pitchy stuff done. But you're here today to hear from Nathan. So Nathan, thanks so much for giving up some time and coming to do this for us. I just literally hand over to you now.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome. And it's nice to kind of meet everybody, and hopefully we'll get to chat at the end of it. Shame I can't see all of your beautiful faces, but no, thank you very much. I'm very happy to kind of share some of our experiences. So we'll just jump straight into it. Masterclass, I would say, though, is a very daunting title for this series. I'm CreateFuture's strategy director. I do have sort of 25 years plus of experience in digital brand and proposition consulting, but I'm not a design academic. I do, though, have kind of particularly over the last 8 years, like a ton of practical experience in selling in and facilitating design thinking approaches across a whole range of different types of engagements with our clients. And I'm very, very happy to to share these experiences with you and the BIMA community. It's a community that's given a lot to me in the past as well, so very happy to give something back. So and at CreateFuture, we are all advocates for design thinking and agile ways of working, so it's great to be able to share. So in addition to being the strategy director at CreateFuture, I am also one of its co-founders. So I want to go back a little bit to the history, not as a pitch, but because you'll see why and how design thinking has been really useful for us in the development of us as an agency. So myself and 2 kind of long-standing friends and colleagues, about 9 years ago, started talking about starting something, mainly because we were very frustrated by problems in the client agency model. Some of those were that we'd all been in a kind of full service digital, and we'd seen the benefits that agile software development can bring versus waterfall, but we were still seeing very waterfall practices in things like marketing campaigns, brand development, product development, with all the kind of inherent problems sometimes that waterfall can bring over a longer term project. We also were seeing things like a distance between the people that were working on the problem, the kind of creatives, creative thinkers, designers, copywriters, and the problem itself, often very intermediated by accounts people, client people, and project managers. And absolutely, I value all of those, but it was a bit too distant. There was Chinese whispers going on. So the people working on the problem were very distant from the problem itself, and even distant from the customer, who ultimately they're looking to solve problems for. And also the clients were kind of frustrated at outsourcing, their core competencies and capabilities, the fun parts of their job, which is kind of problem solving, and outsourcing, the relationship with their customer, which are absolutely two things that you should stay kind of very kind of close to. So we founded CreateFuture nearly 8 years ago on the 3 principles, which we still follow to this day, which are kind of fun, fast, and collaborative. And on all of our work, is underpinned by design thinking methodology that we're going to dive into today. So we tend to work at CreateFuture with larger corporate clients. We have a lot of financial services clients, and so we've been successful in kind of introducing design thinking principles and practices to many of these clients, and I'm going to go through a bunch of case studies towards the end. We are, as an outfit, just to give you some context, a mix of sort of 18 people, a mix of generalist strategists, researchers, designers, and kind of client account people in the team. And in 2023, we worked with sort of 27 clients on 118 projects, and those projects range from a week, built around a day's workshop, through to maybe like 18-week engagements, and every one of those, regardless of whether it's short or long, we will follow design thinking methodology. Our work at CreateFuture is primarily in product and service design, and design thinking is very, very well suited to supporting these kind of engagements. But we also here do a lot of work in brand development and experience design. We do a lot of work in kind of team enablement and in storytelling, vision setting and storytelling. And again, design thinking supports all of that work. And I'll give examples at the end of like where we've used design thinking and working in design sprints at the end, where we've applied that to, marketing, campaign development, product, brand projects, and so on. So you can see that it is it's very adaptable and flexible kind of approach used on a wide range of projects. So today I'd like to talk about a few things. I'd like to talk about the need for design thinking in business, and how you can position it to clients. I will go through a little bit of the history, but the core principles and really the kind of 5 key stages of design thinking. And then we'll look at one way of putting it into practice, which is through condensed design sprints, which you might have heard of, along with some examples of how we've used them over the years. And then we'll finish off by talking about like the reality of working this way for agencies and your clients, some of the things you're going to come up against. So, and as I said before, I'm aiming to leave at least 15 minutes, maybe more if we get through a bit quicker, for questions. And I would love questions. So please do feel free to note them down as you go, or pop them into the chat or the Q&A buttons at the bottom. I'll keep an eye on them as we go, and I'll either answer them on the fly, or we'll go through and we'll work through some of those questions at the end. So yeah, please get your questions ready. Please don't leave me hanging for the last 10 minutes. That's just going to be awkward. Okay. So I've talked a little bit about some of the, I guess, the endemic issues that, challenges that our clients faced in terms of siloed thinking and legacy ways of working. And but there are other drivers for why design thinking is well suited, in terms of kind of helping clients with their problem solving. And one thing that's been really successful for us is that, design thinking as a way to support innovation in the client's businesses. So we're starting obviously with a stat from McKinsey. I've been told it's kind of obligatory to include a stat from McKinsey in a deck. As I say, most of our work is in innovation, and CEOs believe that innovation is critical to their growth. And then most of our work is in that space. We actually describe ourselves as an innovation and design company. So, CEOs recognize that innovation is important. We're in a rapidly changing world and competitive environment. Just take this last year in terms of the emergence of AI and LLMs. There is always something coming that is going to potentially disrupt your industry and disrupts the business models. So it's important to develop a culture of innovation and practices that support innovation, not just because it helps you to introduce and improve products and services, but it helps to protect a dominant position. So it also, this culture of innovation means the business is then better able to respond to rapid market changes. It means you're closer to your customer. You don't lose touch with what the market needs. You can point innovation at making efficiencies to save waste and reduce costs, and increasing your competitiveness and improving the relationship, as I said before, that you have with your customer. And even the most established companies are at risk from competitors. And indeed, in our experience, the bigger you get, the more difficult it can be to innovate and protect against competitors. And sometimes that fear is a great motivator. So the three kind of things that we often see that are impediments to innovation, and design thinking is very helpful in helping to kind of overcome those impediments. So I'm going to use a couple of examples as we go here, things that we've seen. Like, we've recently been doing some work in the energy space, so I'll just, because it's fresh in my mind, we might use a couple of those examples from energy. But innovation project usually starts with a business problem, or maybe a perceived risk or opportunity. So something we've been working on recently is energy quotes are being started, but they're not completed. Like, why is that? And so in order to face into these challenges and opportunities, you need to face into kind of the complexity of them. So complexity is difficult sometimes for the clients to face into. So the one problem is, like, it is innovating in areas that they don't particularly well understand, and that can be scary for clients. So they will tend to fall back into just tackling the problems. And design thinking can be a really useful way of helping clients to explore areas that they are not that comfortable with. As you'll see, it gives you a lot of tools to kind of explore those spaces and reduce the risk of playing in those spaces to develop new products and services. Clients will often, when faced with uncertainty, again, fall back to their established procedures and processes, this routine rigidity that exists within the company. And design thinking, in terms, is a very, by now, well understood, well-developed set of approaches, which can be quite safely applied, often alongside existing and established procedures and processes, that can bring actually some fresh thinking and some fresh energy into what can sometimes be stale or tired, like, working environments that we've seen. And then also, when you're facing into the unknown, there's a big problem is kind of allocation of resources. There's a focus when you get to a certain size just to be efficient and consistency and drive that operational efficiency. That doesn't really leave room to explore. And again, design thinking, and particularly things like the sprints we're going to talk about, give you a way to time box really the amount of time and resources that you're going to look to point at an innovation opportunity. So using it as a foil to combat some of these legacy ways of thinking, ways of planning, and aversion to risk. Design thinking has been really useful for us in terms of particularly taking into some of the larger clients that we work with. So what is it? I mean, design thinking, it was really developed. It goes back, the research into it goes back earlier, but it was really developed in the design schools at Stanford in the 70s. Is when the kind of the core sort of principles were established, and it was commercialized to extent by IDEO, who you may well have heard of, a big product design company based in Palo Alto, but working globally. One of their early successes was kind of pointing at and developing things like the Apple mouse. So, design thinking, designers, again, it's important to establish designers are not just the people who make pictures. So anyone who is solving problems and creating something new is a designer, whether that's a new TV, a new online learning course, or a joiners and leavers procedure, like any problem that you're working on, you are designing. So I'm pretty sure that applies to pretty much everybody who's joined this session. So you're designers, and design thinking is really a process. It's a shared language and a set of tools that help you sort of approach any problem with a designer's mindset. It is human-centered at its heart, both in terms of making the process accessible for the people doing or participating in the design process, but it's also very user or customer centric in the way that it encourages organizations to focus on the people that they're creating for. And customer centricity is one of the most effective ways to position design thinking. It's very hard for a client to argue against a customer centric approach. A CEO these days will often be standing up and saying, purpose or the customer is at the heart of everything that we do. But the reality on the ground can often be very, very different. And the people in the business who are looking to drive change and achieve things, can use design thinking and customer centered approach. They want to deliver value for customers, and they are often facing against some of this inertia, legacy thinking that we kind of previously mentioned, which is design thinking is a great foil against. Additionally, I would add that design thinking places a great emphasis on prototyping and testing and learning, which kind of, as we'll see, is one of the great ways in which this design thinking approach de-risks innovation, which again can be a very strong selling point. So, touched a little bit on the history of it. The origins of design thinking actually go right back in looking at the kind of psychological studies of creativity in the 1940s, and then the development of creativity techniques in the 50s, which looked at how designers and thinkers have approached problem solving through history and in the past. So in that sense, design thinking, I would say, is kind of more of a discovery, really, of these established ways of working than an invention. And at its most basic level, as I said, it's really how designers approach knowing, thinking, and acting. So if you approach any challenge like a designer, you will probably go through the 5 stages that were on this slide. And what you'll find is actually over time is you probably find yourself applying these to things in your own life. I know I certainly do. Any of my kind of like side creative endeavors, or even if it's recently buying a car, these kind of thinking and stages will become second nature to you. There are and those stages, we'll go through them, are obviously up here. Empathizing with the people that you're designing for, defining, kind of clearly articulating the problem that you're looking to solve, ideating, co-creating and ideating widely before then prototyping what you think is the most promising solution to that challenge, and then testing and validating or evaluating your ideas with the people that you are designing for. And we'll go into each of these stages in a little bit more detail, and then I'll show how they can be condensed down into one fairly rapid but very productive week. Okay, so the main aim of the Amplify stage is to develop the best possible understanding of your users in the time that you've got. You're looking to understand their needs and the problems that are underlie the development of the product or the service that you want to create. So let's say that the business challenge is that customers are starting energy quotes but not completing them. And in this phase, you would look to understand that customer's world as it relates to the changing energy provider, not just the application process. What else is going on in the broader context that's maybe impeding them from completing this process? So one of the criticisms of design thinking is that empathize is often used as a shortcut to research. It's like, oh, I empathize with that person, therefore I'm able to design for them. It is absolutely not okay to substitute research for empathize. Empathy comes out of the research that you're doing. So taking a really literal example, like 5 white guys in London cannot empathize the needs of a recent migrant mother, trying to set up electricity account in a foreign language for the first time. You need to do some research into what's going on in that person's world. So always advocate for doing some primary research, speaking to customers as part of the design thinking process. I'm not going to go into everything that you can do, like the quantitative, primary, secondary research methods that you could use here. What I would do, and what I always do, is I would refer you to Erica Hall's excellent book, Just Enough Research. I'll say that again so you can write it down if you're taking notes. Like Erica Hall, she has a book called Just Enough Research, and even just following her on Twitter or LinkedIn, you'll get some really valuable insights into how to do it. And as the title suggests, Just Enough Research is a very practical approach. It's about just always finding enough to give you the provocations that you need to do good enough research to validate the work that you evaluate the things that you're working on. So the next stage is in define. Is the goal here is to be able to definitively state your users' needs and problems. So you gather everything that you've learned and you state the problem in a user-centric way. So what do we mean by user-centric? So a company-centric way would be saying, like, our customers are starting energy quote processes but not completing them. And then after you've defined, you can say it in terms of what the customer is struggling with. Like, so customers find it hard to navigate the complexity of the energy market and they don't feel comfortable making decisions at the moment. So how could we help them feel more confident? So you're zeroing in on some of the issues that you're trying to solve, and you're reframing them in a way that is customer centric. Now this stage is so important. Without going through this stage, you will find that your team or teams will often jump to solutions, and you'll find that they're solving not one problem in a few different ways, which is good, but you'll find that different teams are solving different problems, which causes issues later down the line. So taking stock, reviewing the research, making sure you have defined the problem in customer-centric terms before you start to ideate solutions. It sounds so simple, but it's something that's often skipped and is vitally important. So the next stage in the design thinking process is to ideate and to identify innovative solutions to the problem statement that you've created. So you'll look at the problem from different perspectives and ideate innovative solutions to your problem. And I'll walk through, when we go through the sprint process in a minute or two, I'll break down this ideation process in a little bit more detail. But the key to this stage is to ideally co-create with the people close to the problem. So that includes clients and sometimes users and customers. And this is something that I've actually found some agencies to be a bit uncomfortable with, is actually opening up the creative process to their clients, bringing them into empowering them and enabling them, to come up with ideas alongside them. And in our experience, clients, and actually there's been some resistance to it on the client side as well, I have to say, but when clients feel supported to go through that, it actually generates much better results. If you're working on a problem on behalf of your client, you may have become an expert in it in just the last 2 or 3 weeks. They've been living with that problem for weeks, months, years. They are much closer to the problem, therefore they are better placed to kind of come up with solutions if you can give them the support and the frameworks to ideate and collaborate with you. And the other is then to go wide, is to explore a whole range of potential solutions and not go for the first and the most obvious solution. It's also important to create this ideation becomes quite a democratic process as well, so that everybody's ideas, not just like the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion, or the person whose job it's supposed to be creative. Everybody should have a chance to contribute to those to the solution. Then in the prototype stage, you're looking to produce a number of inexpensive, scaled down, but realistic feeling versions of the potential solution. So you're aiming for Goldilocks quality, not intended to be built or used, just enough to be tested. So you're looking to test your ideas at the lowest possible cost and effort. And that way you are not protected of it or feel too bad for killing it as a potential answer. If you spend a week creating this beautiful, almost MVP or almost ready to go solution, then if it doesn't test well, you start to make excuses for that. And as opposed to being like, okay, we only spent a day on it, bin it, we'll go back, we'll try something else. So the prototyping stage, you create something that feels real, but in as little time as possible, is kind of really important stage, should never be skipped. And then finally is testing. So testing your ideas with real customers. And again, like I said, Erica Hall's book has got some great goes into a lot of depth on how you can test. And this can be very, very lightweight. In a sprint, I'll take you through that we're only testing with just 5 customers. But really in this stage, what we're looking to do is just to learn how the people think, behave, and feel towards the solution, and doing that with an open mind as to what will happen next, which is why I always try and catch you. You'll hear me doing it on the call, trying not to say validate, but to say evaluate. We're not going in there to say, right, we want to find out this idea works. You're looking to learn about the proposal and your prototype. Now, any one of these stages, these are the 5 stages of design thinking, any one of these stages could take an hour, or they could take a couple of weeks or months. We have done projects where the research or the empathy stage has taken, a couple of months to, before we start moving into any kind of form of definition or ideation. What is important is not how long you take on them. It's just that you approach them and you work through each of these stages. And what you'll find is at any stage, you should feel comfortable going backwards, and you probably will go backwards. Not everything that you propose will work or test well, or things will work, but they'll give you new insights, which encourage you to then generate new ideas. So like anything in life, the design thinking process probably will get messy, and you need to be kind of comfortable with that. So I mentioned obviously that our projects at CreateFuture can often take between like a week and several months, all still following the design thinking approach. However, when we started at CreateFuture, we relied very heavily on something called a Google Venture Sprint, and that's what I want to kind of talk to you about now. It's a very accessible way, both for individuals, agencies, and clients, to quickly get up to speed, get some practice, and introduce some of these design thinking approaches. Then once you've done a number of these, you can find that you get more comfortable at breaking them and making them shorter, or going into more depth and extending the process over weeks and months. But as I say, it's a very well-defined, a very accessible way to start doing design thinking. So just to recap, we mentioned fast as one of our values at CreateFutures. Clients always want to move faster. It's a very good way of selling in design sprints. You will find once you get practiced at these that you are able to deliver things that could take months in the space of a couple of weeks. The reality in most businesses, though, is is more messy, and over longer projects, even if you're trying to stick to design thinking principles, old habits, politics, processes, all of these kind of things kind of kick back in. Where the Google Venture Sprint can help is that it's a very, very viable way, as I say, of introducing clients to design thinking. To backtrack a little, it was designed by a designer called Jake Knapp, who worked at Google Ventures at the time. And Google Ventures would be making lots of bets on companies, investing in lots and lots of companies. And the first thing they would ask each of those companies is, what's the one thing that's holding your business back? And then Jake's design team had to work with those founding teams often to try and solve that problem. So he needed a very repeatable and accessible process to problem solve. He wanted it to be aligned with the principles of design thinking because he knows that that worked, but it needed to be done quickly, accessibly, and done by people who are like non-designers, you know, especially after like the first couple of times of being walked through it. So what he'd done is over like many of these engagements had honed this down into kind of a templated approach which could be delivered in a week. And he wrote it into an excellent book called Sprint, which again would be my second recommendation if you're interested in this, is to read the book, and that will take you through everything that you need to do day to day. So the GV Sprint is essentially what you'll be pitching to your client is, let's find something that's important to you to work on, that's the right size, that we could potentially solve, prototype, and get some feedback on in a week. We're going to work on this project from Monday to Friday, ideally. We're going to work on it as one team from 10 till 4 or 4:30 each day, leaving a little bit of time in the morning to check your emails and not working through into the night. This is not like a hackathon. You know, we're not trying to break anyone and work until like 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. People have lives. Healthy, happy people do better work. So we're not trying to break anyone. It's just very organized and time boxed. Ideally, you're working in one location. You know, a space like this is great. You need a big whiteboard, you know, you need a big table that you work around, you need some flip charts, and ideally you work in one space that you can cover the walls with your thinking as you go. The reality is sometimes a little bit different from that. You need someone who's comfortable, skilled facilitator, and you often might want to bring a designer into the process as well to help you visualize some of the artifacts. And then you're going to also want to identify 3 to 5 people from the client's team, on the client side, that are going to be close to the problem that you're working on, as I say. And then you're going to take those and you're going to go through this kind of very condensed design thinking process to work on one problem for a week. So what does that look like day to day? So day one is about aligning on the problem that you're looking to solve, getting to that definition point. So you can't do enough research in one day. The reality is that research is done in the period before the sprint, and that sometimes that's a couple of days research, sometimes it's a few weeks or months of research. But then you come together to review all the research, you draw a map of the problem space, and you kind of collaboratively, you can see one in the background here actually, and then you kind of collaboratively take notes about where the greatest opportunity to intervene might be, and make sure that you're aligned around the actual problem to be solved. Now, 4 times out of 5, the problem you're looking to solve is the one that you thought it would be, but then that one time, it's not, you know, and that is useful to go through that process to make sure that you don't end up spending a week working on the wrong part of the problem. So for example, in one sprint, you know, we thought we were looking at solving a problem about conversion stage, but then taking a step back, looking at all the research, we realized actually it's pointless trying to fix that without rectifying something much earlier in the journey. So we shifted our focus, we fixed that, and we saved the conversion issue until for another sprint. So you will end the Monday informed, on the same page, and aligned and confident that you're working on the same problem, on the right problem, sorry. Tuesday is a really fun day. Tuesday is when you ideate, you know, and ideation, I just want to stress, is not the domain of the creative types. Like, the good ideas, you know, can and should come from anyone. The GV Sprint gives you a step-by-step breakdown of how to come up with a range of appropriate ideas to the problem you're looking to solve. And it starts in the morning with lightning demos, which again, actually I can show you one here. Just this wasn't planned, but yeah, we got one from earlier, which basically what we do in the morning is we go and look at how other people have solved the challenge that we're working on, and we share best practice examples, and we make a little doodle and we write a little name, and we say, what's the one thing that we could borrow from that example? So everybody will share 3 or 4, and that gives us lots of kind of like fodder to inform our ideation in the afternoon. And then in the afternoon, once we've gone back and we've reviewed all the research from the previous days and the problem we're looking to solve and our inspiration, is we take everyone through a kind of a 4-step approach where we hone these kind of notes down into 3 or 4 simple solution sketches per person. You do not need to be able to draw. If you can draw a stick man, that's fine. That's enough. That's all you need. We're not brainstorming. We're supporting people in their ability to work individually. And then we are sharing the ideas and we are critiquing and building on the best of those ideas together. So you will end the day on Tuesday with a wall full of great and appropriate potential solutions to your problem. On Wednesday, you take all of those ideas and you start to pull them into the solution to your problem. So there's rarely one clear winner. The solution is going to be a combination of ideas. So you will further refine and develop your strongest solutions on the Wednesday, and you'll start to pull them together into a storyboard. That'll be the skeleton of your prototype. And then on Thursday, you will split into teams. You will spend one day prototyping something that you are comfortable putting in front of your customers. And the prototype could be an ad set. It could be a short video we've done in the past. It could be a landing page or even a campaign, a few stages of a campaign with mocked up artifacts. You could even do like service role playing. It really depends on what you're working on. But with the right assets, and if you can prep the right assets in advance and the right people in the room, you can create some pretty high fidelity journeys, as you can see from this one that we were doing for a gaming company in Atlanta a couple of years back. And then on the Friday, you're looking to get feedback, and this is crucial. And again, really, really interesting day. And again, it's so surprising how few or uncomfortable clients can often be, like getting one-to-one and talking to their customers. So the amount of insight that our clients get just from sitting opposite somebody and watching as they're working and interacting with the ideas is so invaluable. You're looking only really to test on the day with 5 customers, potential users. There's a study from Nielsen Norman which shows that over 5, the amount of valuable insight you get starts to drop off. And you can see it through the day. You start to see the patterns emerging even after the 3rd, 4th, and 5th call. So it's a really effective and efficient way of getting just enough insight to give you some confidence in the idea, like whether to keep it, kill it, bin it, or how it's likely to need to be changed. And as I say, you have one, ideally an experienced tester, taking somebody through the journey, normally these days over a video call, with your colleagues, ideally watching cameras, audio off in the background, so they can firsthand hear and collate in a really structured way feedback, which you can then take a step back and see if you're all aligned on, did you all hear and see the same sort of criticisms or feedback. So let me take you through a few examples of things that we've worked on for this. So we've done a number of these with Adidas, looking at points in the digital conversion journey. And one of these was for the hype around some of their kind of most hyped products as well, and looking at a bit of dead space in the journey, really, which was in the run up to these collaborations or new products being announced. There might be rumors of them floating around, but people certainly weren't getting the information about what was coming from Adidas. And their customers need to know this. A lot of people are saying, one quote was someone saying that they live on beans on toast until they know until they can plan what it is that they're going to try and buy on a month-by-month basis from Adidas or Nike. So over the course of a week, we designed an end-to-end new release calendar and hype sort of journey for them, which they could then rapidly test and then take a step back, unpack, and start to build into the digital journey. We've applied it for strategy development. Recently we worked with YBS as well to help them develop a new vision for their digital teams. And working in a sprint was still in a kind of appropriate way. And in this case, the people we're testing with were other stakeholders in the business, but we still went through those stages of researching, ideating what the vision should be, as a group, of testing and prototyping. It's a very effective way to kind of come together and create a new vision and a strategy deck for which could then be finalized and distributed through the business. We used it to help a client called Hymans Robertson to develop a challenger brand and a challenger proposition in the pension space a couple of years ago. This brand itself never went live. It was a brand that we kind of created quickly on the fly as part of the process, but it helped us test, how would a slightly more irreverent tone of voice, work alongside a different kind of suite of tools and products and a proposition for them. So we're able to test a lot of things in that day. A product idea, the tone of voice, the positioning as well, and working through all of that in a week. As I said before, it's very good for just working through fixing leaky funnels, just trying to fix something that might be wrong with an established journey or a process. And yeah, there's another example there which is similar, which was again of just working to literally in the space of a week bring the right people together to ideate a business which went on to be multi-million pound revenue earning business, but the heart of it was developed in 1 week of working with the client. We used it in the early days. Again, sometimes the answer is no, but we used it to evaluate whether there was a role for augmented reality in helping people to better understand their bills. And then on the creative side as well, we did the campaign in our early years for Expedia, which ended up being a couple of £100,000 of production. But the genesis of the idea for that campaign came from taking our client Expedia and their clients Brand USA through a week-long design sprint to come up with to come up with potential creative ideas for that campaign. And then the strongest tested ones were the ones that we then had confidence in to further develop and take into production. So there's a number of ways that we could use it. I want to finish in the last 7 minutes or so, let's aim for, to go through, some of the reality of working in this way with agencies and with clients. Oh, hang on, my designer's done something here now. Let's see how this works. Okay, right. So one thing, so when you're talking to clients and about introducing these, there are some really useful selling points. One is that working in design thinking and working in sprints in particular can be very effective at breaking down the silos in the business. You see it in every business. It gets worse the larger the business. Often teams are just not talking to each other, and real customer orientated solutions need to ignore those silos. So design thinking can be a shared language and shared set of practices, and sprints in particular can be a great way to bring together people from sales, operations, finance, engineering, give them all the space and the process to work on an idea together to help break down some of those silos in the business. It's a good way, as I said before, for helping clients to try out new ways of working. It's an adage, what you here is not going to get you to the success in the future. You need to be trying to innovate, not just the products, but also the ways of working. And this is a fairly well established, tried and tested way of excuse me, of working together to solve problems in a customer-centric way. As I said before, we have case study after case study, testimonial after testimonial of clients turning around saying, we got something done in a week where we have been struggling with it for months, or we know that we wouldn't have got something done in months. And you do that by getting the right people in the room, enabling them, cutting all of that dead air and that dead time out of the decision making, getting the right decision makers in the room. So it can be extremely effective, as say, of just shortening those timescales to get something out. And then finally, yeah, there are opportunities through this to bring the customer into the design process. You can co-create, you can bring the customer into this, particularly into the ideation sort of stages, but even just doing things like some primary research to inform the sprint, testing with customers on the Friday, or maybe on the Monday of bringing a couple of customers in for half an hour video chats for them to talk you through their experience of the thing that you're working on in a kind of ask the expert session. All of these things can be great ways to kind of bring the customer into the design process and make sure the thing that you're working on is going to be a better fit for them. Working this way is not without its challenges, though. I think the first thing that's most important is to try and push against an open door. And what has been very successful for us is finding the change makers or the supporters to this way of thinking in your client's organization. There's often somebody who has maybe joined recently who is frustrated at the speed or the slowness, I should say, of getting things done, or the silos, or the lack of innovative thinking. They want to be empowered, to do things in a different way. And for us, enabling them through saying, well, let's do a sprint. Let's show, we don't have to throw out any of the old ways of working, but we can show we can do this alongside, and we can show how effective it can be. Has been really, really successful for us. I've stressed this a few times. Do not position, design sprints as a silver bullet. I mean, I can this more, but also don't skip. Don't think that we can just empathize or work just on the knowledge that we have in the business. I would always encourage you to do some research first, and it doesn't have to be extensive, but some primary, some secondary research. Get that collated. Make sure that's understood before you go into the design process. You need to get good at doing hybrids. I think, when we started doing these like 7-8 years ago, we did them all in the room. It was pre-COVID, and they were very, very effective. It's by far preferable to do it in the same spaces if you can, but the reality is that you're going to have to work through the process and consider how can we accommodate people dialing in. I could do a whole other hour's talk on that, but as I say, the reality is you're going to have to work through that and try and accommodate people and doing that in a way that's not going to denigrate the overall experience for everybody. The other reality is that getting condensed blocks of time with your client is really hard. But there's also a good, asking clients to clear Monday to Friday, 10 till 4:30 for 4 or 5 people is a big ask. But we can use that to our advantage. It helps you to identify a meaningful enough problem for your client to do that. If they're not willing to do that, then maybe they don't care that much. It's not that important to them to solve this thing. And is that something that you want to be working with them on? So it's good. It's a good way of qualifying whether something's kind of appropriate. If they are willing to say, okay, yeah, we'll do this. We'll clear the diaries, and we'll try and get everybody in the same room to work on this for a week. Now, once you've done a couple, you will become more practiced at sort of saying, okay, well, we can accommodate someone being there for, half of it, or someone dropping in and dropping out. That brings a lot of risks. You certainly need to have a core team through the whole process. And the most important thing is you need a decider, someone who is willing to and empowered to make decisions, because, as I say, it's time boxed. You cannot sort of prevaricate too much as you go through the process. And if someone isn't empowered to make decisions, you can find yourself backtracking, which can be really costly in terms of losing a couple of days of effort, really, which we've had in the past, unfortunately. I actually get the impression design thinking overall, I am a complete advocate for. Sprints themselves can be very, very, very useful when pointed at the right challenge. What you need to be careful in selling them in, though, is not to position them as a silver bullet. You can get an awful lot done in a week, but it is not done and dusted at the end of it. At the end of it, you have a prototype which you should be comfortable binning, and a set of insights as to what to do next. So there can be really great ways to get started, the thin end of the wedge of a bigger design thinking project, and that's often, as I said before, a very accessible way and a good way for clients and agencies alike to get started in working in this way. And finally, yeah, I've said a few times, in my opinion, design thinking and sprints are a great way for clients to sort of de-risk innovation, to take risks with confidence. But the whole process exists to help you figure out if the thing you're doing is right or wrong, and sometimes it will be wrong. Whereas clients, they want that certainty. And a handful of occasions we've had it where we've spent a week and it's been a bust, right? And I'm saying that over like 8 years and hundreds of these kind of types of engagements. 9 times out of 10, you're getting something, a lot of value out of it, either the core of the right solution, and at the very least you're getting a loads of really, really useful insight as to why that was the wrong answer, which you can take into the next thing. So you need to get good, if you're selling these into, manage that as a potential outcome and manage your practice. You're kind of like, well, at least we failed fast. At least, in one of the sprints we had was an idea that had been floating around a financial services company for about a year, and they had spent a lot of money with one of the big consultancies exploring this. And after a week sprint, we were able to very clearly take a step back and say, look, customers aren't really into it. The commercial argument isn't there for this. It's propositionally, it's not the right thing for us to be doing. Let's just bin it. And being able to take that idea off the slate was freeing, because it means, well, we're not doing that now, and it frees up your time, your energy, your resources to work on something else. So there are ways to position the failure as a good thing. Okay, I am done talking. That is me. 7 minutes left, a bit less than I thought, but it looks like there's only one question in the chat anyway, which is from Yanis. So what if the prototype doesn't test well on Friday? Do you go back to square one? Is it easy? So I've just been talking about that. The reality is, if it doesn't test well on Friday, is you don't have to go back to square one. You can either amend that prototype, and you will always iterate that prototype based on the feedback that you've got, whether it tests well or not. But the reality is, you might go back to either to ideation, or you might go back to the Thursday. You might look at the wall of ideas and pick 3 or 4 different ideas that are, that working from what you learned on testing. You say, well, actually, customers seem to be more receptive to something like this. We had a few ideas that met that. Right, let's prototype and test those. As I said before, it's not, customers don't want to do that, clients don't want to do that. But if you can handle those objections well and say, well, this is good value, at least, we didn't, if we hadn't done any testing, we could have cracked on with weeks or months of design work and building the wrong thing. So that's part of the process, very much part of the process. Okay, it's a few minutes left and I'm happy to finish early, but if there's any more questions, equally, I'd love to answer them for you. I'm going to give you a few seconds, otherwise, Matt, you might want to jump in. Is there another one here?
Hello.
Do we still use more waterfall-based approaches, or only? No, so we do. Yeah, Tim, it's a good question. Do we use more waterfall-based approaches or only a sprint-based approach exclusively? We absolutely do still deliver, over the course of a month. Clients want to know what are the rough phases that we are going to be working through. So what we would tend to do is go through that design thinking approach still over a longer period, but we will work in sprints as almost spikes of kind of really, high energy, condensed periods to get to collaborate and get us and the client team working together for a few days or for a week to try and break the back of that part of the problem. And then we will assess and move into the next stage. I mean, for us at CreateFuture, we always say that we take projects through 3 stages, which is explore, imagine, and create. So you can imagine in each of those, we'll often do sprints, a kind of, almost a sprint to make sense of the things that we've learned in the research. definitely working in sprints as we imagine potential solutions. And then we will move into maybe more kind of agile design, 2-week design sprints, you know, when we get to that later stage. So they can, as I say, sprints in particular are a great way to introduce these alongside established working methods, you know, so it's not so much of a shock to the system. I think that's
Just got one more question in the chat, Nathan, if that's
yeah, in the chat, here we go. How do you know a problem is the right size to take into a week-long design sprint? Love to be able to give you an easy answer for that. One of the qualifications is, is the client happy to put the resource into it? You know, is it important enough for them? It's hard. I don't have an easy answer for that, because, you know, you need to, is it something that can be prototyped in a day is often a good way to kind of try and size it, you know, to create something that's got a decent enough fidelity, and to, you know, decent enough fidelity to be prototyped to a decent amount of fidelity in a day is a good way often to kind of to size it. If you pick something that's too small, it feels very, very wasteful, and you'll get clients saying, I can't believe we've spent a week like reorganizing the, you know, the stationery cupboard, right? Clearly you can't redesign the entire e-commerce experience for a client this way. But what you can do is you could explore, if someone's looking to completely rethink, let's say, their e-commerce experience, you could explore some of the high-level concepts for that approach in a week-long design sprint, knowing that you're not going to get into any of the kind of detail that sits behind that. You know, so you can work at a high enough level to set the direction for something like a digital vision, or a conceptually a new way of doing e-commerce. It's really well suited for, as I say, the things like the core of a campaign idea, fixing a part of a journey. As I say, there's no great answer, but in the book there is a good section on how to find the right size of challenges. And let's just see if there's anything else. No, I think we've done that one. Matt, is there anything else?
Did we get the Vince question? Any advice on a situation where you're bringing in the customer and you find they have fixed ideas, rigid thinking?
Yeah. Need to encourage them to think, well, if you're so confident, it can't hurt to go wide, right? To try some other ones and put their idea against other ideas. The other thing is, you know, you can say, okay, well, you've got that idea, but let's just take a step back. Let's just make sure we do the research. Let's come up with some ideas. Let's put your idea into the mix, and against all of those, let's see how your idea kind of like stacks up. And, you know, there's a point in the sprint journey where you can, it's called a rumble, where you basically split off into two teams and you prototype two solutions and you test idea A against version B, you know, where you're unclear or unconfident, you know, or you've got two ideas that you want to test. So that's one kind of other approach. But again, it's, you know, it's just saying no to somebody when they think they know the answer is not the best approach. Saying, okay, let's validate it, you know, let's just check it against the research, let's create and prototype something, but, you know, let's do that amongst the, you know, maybe quickly prototyping a couple of ideas to get feedback on it, I would say is probably the way to go, though. And as I said before, it's like often you'll have the most success by trying to find the change makers in your business, on your client side, who have more of an expansive growth mindset than just the fixed rigid idea. I hope that helps. I know it's not, again, not the most succinct answer. Okay, we're at time, but is there anything else? Thanks, Vince. And thanks, Jake, as well. Appreciate that.
That was really interesting.
Good.
Thank you.
The two resources, I would say, I forget the guy's name. It's Steve Brown. I think he is the founder of IDEO. I did a good book on design thinking. Sprint by Jake Knapp is the one to read if you're going to do it, and just follow it, like literally treat it as your Bible if you're going to do one day by day. And then Just Enough Research by Erica Hall would be my follow-on resources. And me, feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn if you want to have a chat about any of this.